As many of you may know, Ethereum has revolutionized the idea of smart contracts and decentralized applications. We have multiple token standards, each serving unique purpose and creating new possibilities. But as with any technology, there's always room for improvement and innovation and a new standard. So, if you are looking for a gas efficient approach to lockable ERC-721 tokens, stay with us. Welcome to PEEPanEIP, where we talk about a standard made available for the smart contract developers, infrastructure providers, and the users of the Ethereum ecosystem. Today, we are going to learn about ERC-6982, Efficient Default Lockable Tokens. Documented in May 2023, co-authored by Francesco Sullo and Alex, the proposal has been moved to the final status recently. To share motivations, specs, and stories with the documentation of this standard, we are joined by Francesco. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Francesco is a software engineer and Ethereum contributor who has authored multiple Ethereum standards. We are going to learn more on abstract use case and implementation of ERC-6982. But before we dive in there, may I request to please share about his professional background and how he got into the Ethereum space.
So I'm always been into cryptography. And I built the first online password manager in 2006. And for me, it was an evolution. You know, it's all about cryptography in cryptocurrencies. So I get involved in a little bit after Bitcoin comes out, but had an interruption, I would say. And later in 2016, I was working in Yahoo, and I thought I definitely should go more deep in Ethereum. And so I resigned, and I took like a year and a half off just to study, to make crazy projects, you know, and try to figure out what was going on and learning as much as possible, you know. And that is starting after I worked in many other things. I participated in Tron Foundation and other blockchains. So, and currently I work mostly with Metaverse in this moment, but...
Amazing. It's a pleasure to have you here to learn some more. So without further ado, let's peep in.
The primary problem that I found with the lockable token is, so first, let's understand what are lockable tokens. There are two primary categories. There are tokens like soulbound token, made famous by Vitalik Buterin, but initially proposed by Nicola Greco in 2018, I think, that are tokens that are locked forever. You know, it's a soulbound, is a badge, for example, it's something that is assigned to you, it's locked forever. And another case is that became more common in 2021, 2022, is to have tokens that you can lock in a pool without staking in the pool. It means that you remain the owner of the token. But the token technically is like if has been staked, but it's not staked. The pool does not own the token. You still keep the ownership, but you have the advantage of keeping the ownership and having all the advantages of staking virtually in the pool. So those are the two primary cases that are the most common. And what I realize is that the interface were out there for this goal. They were not really considering the first scenario. So they were very good for the second scenario, where I lock something and later, but not from when a token is born locked, it dies locked, is locked forever. So most of the interface, like in fact here I was checking the ERC-5192, the same like the previous interface was 7 5753, they both focus on this part of the project. So you have that you lock, you unlock, you emit an event every time that this happens, you know. And emitting an event every time means that you are not considering the case the same for this other interface, that you lock and you are locked all the time. You are not considering the case that is a badge, is locked forever. Why I need to waste gas every time that I mint a token and say, okay, this token is minted and is locked. I don't need to tell this all the time. I can just say, hey, this token by default is locked. That is it. I say that one time, I don't emit anymore any event, except if something specific happens to that token, to a specific token ID. And that was the goal that I was trying to solve with this interface, promoting a reduction of waste of gas. It is always a big problem on Ethereum. You don't want to spend gas that is unnecessary. So that was my primary motivation. And initially, I tried to contribute to 5192, but unfortunately, I arrived too late. I noticed that the interface too late, and it was already finalized, so I could not participate. I remember that I made a pull request, and PEEPanEIP, I don't know is actually the name of the person, but that is his nickname. He sent me, you cannot do that. It's already finalized, but you can create a new proposal, and that is what I did. So it's, but initially I tried just to contribute to this proposal because to me, most of the elements was just missing the default behavior for the token, you know. So, and by the way, another advantage that in the way has been set up, 6982 as it's supposed that you emit a default locked event when the contract is deployed. So you emit the first time, and there are cases where you want to change the default locked events that are, for example, there are many tokens that they are sold without really knowing what you are buying. You know, there is a reveal later. When there is a later reveal, what happens is most likely you don't want to allow the token to be transferable before. So the token can be born and can be deployed being locked by default. Then, let's say, when the sale ends and there is a reveal, then is when it's unlocked by default. So in one emission, you unlock the entire collection. And that is, it's all about being efficient. That is it.
Interesting. So yeah, I was following the FEM page, and it definitely suggests that one of the motivations behind ERC-6982 was the PR that was made for ERC-5192 minimal soul-bound NFT. As you mentioned in your conversation, that PEEPanEIP, who is one of the IP editors, mentioned that we generally do not try to update a final proposal. Instead, we welcome proposals which are new and maybe supporting that. So I'm curious, is there any relationship between ERC 5192 and ERC 6982, or it's a kind of complementing the existing proposal? What do you think we are going to achieve with the proposal 6982 here?
Yeah, there is not a real relationship, I think, because it are two alternatives. You are not going to use both because the name of the event locked is the same. So I think it's a choice from the implementer. If the implementer has to work mostly on dynamic lockable token that the lockability can change with time, I think it's 5192 is perfect. It does everything that you need. It requires to implement only one function instead of two. But if you, paradoxically, that is an interface that was born for soulbound token. And I think that for soulbound token, 6982 is much better because it has the default locked. That is the case of that you want to take projects, for example, like Galaxy. Galaxy, they are a badge for, for marketing strategies, whatever. And on their contract, there are millions of badges. if they want to emit a locked event for minimal budgets, if you amount the entire gas consumed in the end, it's a lot of gas, even if it's on Polygon, but it's still a lot of gas. And they could have emitted one event, and that is it. I think that it's the case where for Soulbound is particularly better, I think, 6982. Then, but for the rest, you can definitely use it. It's also about choice because if you look in 5192, there are two events, locked events and unlocked events. That is clearly more efficient than having a locked with one parameters. Because, but I think this is it's a compromise that is. It makes sense because that locked parameters adds only 230 gas. That is honestly very small and makes more clear also for whoever is following, is listening to the events. They listen to only one event and they know from that parameter if it's locked or is unlocked. It's very similar to what happens with the transfer event with an ERC-721. We could have created a transfer event, a minting event, mint, a burn, Instead, the author, they decide to create one event that is, if starts from zero, is a mint, goes to zero, is a burn. If not, is a transfer, That approach allows the entities listen to the events to follow one event and building a better understanding of In fact, I was tempted in the beginning to use only one event and specify if was default, but that became hard to understand. So things need to be simple. I think it is very important that when you try to create a standard, is as simple as understandable possible. Because if people get confused, it's not working. So, but I would say the two, they are not in conflict, but they can be used in different scenarios. But I don't see any case where you can use them together.
That's interesting. Yeah, as you mentioned, that standard needs to be simple, and it would be really helpful to have it case by case basis. Like people should have options to choose, and it's great to know that we have multiple standards available as an alternative. So for people who would like to maybe learn more about ERC 5192, may check out our conversation with the author, Tim, on PEEPanEIP episode number 89. We will link the episode in the description to follow. I noticed mention of a couple of other proposals. Those are in stagnant status now. That makes me think about the specs and technical aspects of 6982. What are the key features of ERC 6982 that makes it efficient and default lockable? How is it different from ERC 5753, that is lockable extension for EIP 721, which is currently in stagnant? In your mind, is there benefit of pushing ERC 5753 anymore, or does ERC 6982 that we are discussing today got it covered?
I think that the primary point is the ability of having something for the default. That is the central point of the entire interface, is that in theory, that this interface could have been an extension of 5192 and just adding the default that maybe someone will propose at some moment. I would probably, I would expect that someone can, but there is actually a proposal right now of someone that is proposing an extension to 5192. I don't remember now exactly the number, but is adding range for the locking. And of course, if the range is the full range from 0 to the maximum you int 256 is equivalent to a default locked. So it's an interesting concept. But I think for the technical part is just, it's very simple to implement, but it's the ability of considering what happens by default that makes it very efficient and reducing the need to emit a locked event for any event that you are, for any change, that means the minting, that is what is more crucial for me. Because the minting emits a transfer event. So according to 5192, it should emit also a locked event. And that is where I think there is a high consumption of gas that is unnecessary. But technically, there are no particularly difficulty in this standard. I have implemented it in at least 3 projects. I know at least 3, 4 projects that are using it from the very beginning. And it's quite obvious the way how you want to set up it. Also because the rules are simple. The default locked is the default, but every time there is a locked event, the locked event has priority on the default. So it's quite simple to read the events from an app and understanding exactly what's going on.
That's pretty interesting. And of course, we will get into use cases, adoption, and implementation. But before that, I have a related question with respect to ERC 5753, which is currently in stagnant status. It is a proposal for lockable extension for EIP 721. So my question here is like, do you see a proposal that you have authored, 6982? Does that cover the gap and we may not need to pursue with 5753, or that is also independent and yeah, people can pursue that to solve a little bit different problem?
Yeah, I think that this interface solves a case that is not the same case, because this is when you need to know who is the locker. If you need to know who is the locker, the 6982 is not enough, because it doesn't give you any information about who is the locker, while instead in this specific interface you know who is the locker or who is the unlocker. It's this is a little bit weird. Lock index, unlocker, unlock index. I don't really understand the logic. I think it is probably what because I didn't took a look to the interface in details, but I guess what he expects, say, oh, this is the person, the address that can unlock the token when it's the time. And it's an interesting scenario, because you would expect that the unlocker and the locker are probably the same. In a typical staking pool, the locker of the contract is a staking pool that has the right to lock the contract, and then you would expect it is the same staking pool that unlocks the contract. When the user has completed, I don't know, you stake it for a year, and then you want to unlock, you go there, but technically it's the contract of the staking pool that unlocks the token. It's not the user. The user has approved the staking pool to manage the token. That is what it does. But is the staking pool that does both operations. There can be cases where this is different. So, and you know that, I don't know, I can imagine it, for example, I can say, I'm staking something, but the one I can unstake later, it's you. It's for a different scenario. In that case, probably I want to know who is the unlocker. But honestly, I think that this interface goes too much in a specific case. I found it hard to see as a full standard, because it's, in my opinion, goes too much in one case. It's because if you think about lockability, there are so many cases. Okay, I worked at 2 basic projects for lockability. One is a system to lock a token on a pool without actually transfer the ownership. And in that case, you need something. You need some kind of details you need to know. You need to know who is the locker, who is the unlocker, how can you unlock that, whatever. Another case where I'm working recently is I'm working on a protocol for safe NFTs that is called the Kruna protocol. And in this protocol, there are an NFT can have a protector. So I can set up a protector. What is a protector? I can set up that I use my MetaMask to buy the token, but I have a ledger, and I want to use the ledger as a protector. So the ledger needs to sign an authorization to allow me to transfer the NFT. This protects from phishing, from other stuff, whatever. In that case, for example, I just need to say, oh, by default, the token is unlocked. So there is a default status that say, oh, all the tokens, all the Krona Vault are unlocked, but they can become locked. If I set up a protector, that became locked because only the protector can actually allow me to transfer the NFT, you know. So there are so many different scenarios where, and I think that the specific case of this interface goes in one specific scenario that to me makes it hard to implement in a in a general way, you know. While instead, I think that a standard, for example, both for the Krona protocol and for the lockable token for ERC-6981, I could have made a proposal, but to me, it does not make sense because it's a specific use case, you know. And how many other project will go to use that specific use case? That's question. And that's why you want to keep it as general as possible. And that makes sense for a standard, you know.
Absolutely.
So
Yes,
that is what I think.
absolutely. Yeah, we would like to have a standard which are general for general use cases, not specific to one use case. dApps are there for those purposes. All right. Now that we are partially into the segment of use case and adoption, and I think you have kind of answered my first question here, how we are protecting on staking the asset in a pool. So let me just try to understand it a little bit more. When we are talking about staking, are we talking about staking in general related to like liquid staking pool kind of, or is it something that a project can be designed with the help of this protocol, which can facilitate user or a staker to keep the token under their control by just adding this extra layer of protection here?
Yeah, you know, the interface focuses on what the rest of the world sees about your token. That is the goal of the interface. There is no security intrinsically. There is no security in the proposal in the sense that it depends on how it is implemented. You know, you don't have. There are no indication about how you implement the proposal. The goal for the proposal is to be transparent for the rest of everything else to other people, other entity, marketplace, whatever, to know what's happening. For example, a marketplace like OpenSea, they need to know if that token is sellable or not. If it's not sellable, they don't want to start a transaction and waste gas for the user or accepting, for example, for sale when it's actually not sellable, things like this. It's I think that is it's an actual it's a real the I will say it's literally what an interface is. Interface with the rest of the world and say, this is what I'm doing. As a token in this moment, this is my condition. You know that, you make your evaluation and you do whatever you have to do, but there is no restriction or any other things about how you are actually implementing it. So if you add security features and other things like this, that it's a problem that you will solve in some different way. So even a staking pool, for example, it's someone can say it's not safer than staking in a pool. Yeah, technically it's true because, you know, I have a token, I have a Bored Ape Yacht Club. I want to stake in a pool. It's unlikely that someone will stake in a pool a Bored Ape, but let's say they will do it. You want stake in the pool, it's the pool that decide the contract, if you can unstake it or not. The same way, if you unlock in the token in place, but you don't transfer the ownership, most likely it's the pool that decide when it can be unlocked. You know, and I think that in this case, for example, there is a same level of security because it's the pool that can keep your token locked forever. So of course, if it's in your ownership, the project by the club makes you an airdrop. That's very good because you receive on your on your wallet and not the pool. It's not the pool that receives the ape token, it's you. So it's good, but still the pool in theory can keep your token locked forever. That is where the implementation becomes very important, because you can set up the token in a way that you can say, okay, there is this token is lockable, but for example, there is an expiration, cannot be locked forever. I set up that the maximum is 1 year. If after a year it's still locked, it becomes unlocked. So you have the advantage that the NFT keeps control in some way. The NFT can decide that the pool cannot abuse the NFT, because the NFT keeps its own logic and say, hey, after a year, I unlock this token, I remove any approval. So if the pool before was approved, now is no more approved, so cannot lock it again, And I think that in the end, having a lockability in place improves the security of the token. Of course, that depends on how the NFT has been implemented. If someone implements features like that, adds security and makes a project more solid, of course, nobody requires them to do it, And by the way, another problem with lockability is that it's not retroactive, of course. So you cannot lock Bored Ape in place, because that contract it's not modifiable, It's not upgradable. That is a good thing. So you don't want to upgrade, because the upgradability is cool, but in my opinion, is the number one issue with security. Because the basic concept of blockchain is that you, with smart contract, was that you trust, it's trustless, because you trust the smart contract. I see smart contract, I trust it's perfect. If that is upgradable, I cannot trust it anymore. It's, so I guess there are so many discussions about upgradability, but it's definitely a point on which I think at some moment we will find some better way to manage upgradability.
And I believe there are some proposed standards as well on upgradability.
Yeah.
Here. I don't see that in final status, but definitely something that people can discuss more and fine-tune the proposal.
Yeah.
Very well. You did mention about a couple of projects that you have worked on. I wonder if you have any visibility on the current state of adoption. Are there any notable projects or platforms that have implemented? Or if you would like to maybe talk a bit more about the implementation that you have worked on.
I had exchanges with people in the forum that they were telling me that they were using it in other discussion where someone were asking for interface to manage these cases, and we end up talking about 6982. And I know that there are for sure 4 or 5 projects at least that are using it, and they are in the final stage of. But I don't have a clear visibility on that. I think it would be very good. That is probably something that we should propose for the future. Some kind of a registry that allows to, sorry, here is that allows you to have a visibility on that. It would be very good to have some kind of indexer that index because we see the source code on Etherscan, wherever. So we can definitely have something that get all the code and say, oh, this interface is used 10 projects in 20 projects. I guess Etherscan could do that. It would be helpful, it's
I think that is available. I'm just missing the name. It's by a team which tries to track most of the ERC. So what they do is like they try to get the search the chain, and whatever ERC has been implementing those projects, I guess they collect it. I might want to check on that. I will share the link later on.
Yeah. Thank you. That is actually
It's
very
Dune.
helpful,
Yeah. So I think Dune.xyz.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I know them. I looked at them for other projects. I didn't realize that they also try. I will definitely go to take a look.
Yeah, I find that
Yeah.
interesting as well. Like it generally lists how many contracts have used what proposals, what standards for Ethereum. So it's a good way of tracking.
Yeah.
Very well. I am curious to hear your thoughts on advice for developers and project teams who are considering to implement this proposal. Are there any security concern or anything specific that they should be careful about while implementing this proposal?
Yeah, I think that what sometimes is hard to actually check in projects that have lockability is that not necessarily the rules are always valid. For example, there can be a token that is, for example, let's do this case. In the Luna protocol, that is this protocol for safety, the token, when there is at least one protector, becomes locked. But it's not actually locked because the protector can unlock it and can transfer it. So, it's just a general behavior. It says in standard condition, this token is locked or is not locked, but there can be extra special condition where the token is not locked. For example, it's the same for when a token is locked in a staking pool. It's locked, but the staking pool can unlock it in any moment and transfer it. So I think that is what is really important to be careful when someone implements interface like this, is to have a consistent behavior that is it's very solid, that is not hackable, that because when you go with things that becomes more complex, it's easy to make mistake, and maybe the functioner should return your status is it's not precise, it's misleading, for example, for the market. So, and maybe if someone has to go with really more complex behavior, it's always a good practice to emit specific events that specifies, okay, it's locked, but this can unlock. So you create an event that if I'm following the project, I can listen to that event and say, okay, he says that it's locked, but this address can unlock it in any moment. It means that it can transfer. Because in the end, it's all about transferability, if the token is transferable or not. But let's say that I'm a staking pool and I lock the token. I'm the one that I can unlock. In the same operation, in theory, since I've been approved, I can, in the same operation, unlock the token and transfer it. So I have a big power. And in my opinion, we should always be careful to not give too much power to external actors. And so when someone implements on a ERC-721 interface like this, should really try to focus, because the interface in itself, it's easy, it's a simple concept. Is everything that is around it can become a problem because you underestimate some edge case, and the user does not have that protection they should have on the contract. Contracts should always be audited. Audits are so expensive. That is why.
Yeah, these are pretty good advices here. Yeah, I understand when we are talking about blockchain, cryptocurrency, a lot of money are involved there. So it's always a good idea to have it audited. But yes, as you mentioned, audits are expensive. So we need
Yeah.
to be careful about implementing the proposal, the standard that we choose to add in our project.
Yeah. Also, because I don't know if you follow with the ERC-6551. It's very good for that associate token bound account to an NFT. In that case, an NFT becomes the owner of an entire wallet. And it becomes even more important that it's super protected, because if not, transferring the token, maybe you are transferring, I don't know, $2 million in USDC that are in the wallets, it's a disaster, so you have to be very careful. And so more and more it becomes very important that NFT built with a lot of attention on security, in my opinion.
Indeed. And it seems like the proposal 6551 is currently under review. So yeah, we look forward for this proposal to move forward, going into last call and final. And if it reaches to that status, we would love to invite authors and have this conversation again to let the community know about this another standard which could be really helpful.
Yeah, I love 6551. I'm actually the Kruna protocol that we are building is is supposed to work with 6551 because the problem in this proposal is that now we are digressing on another proposal, but it's that it's built to work with any existent NFT. That means that if you use it with a Bored Ape, it's fantastic, but a Bored Ape is not protected. Is an old, in our world, is an ancient NFT. So you want to have an NFT instead that is very well protected. So the idea about protocol, behind the protocol, is just to create the perfect NFT for a 6551, But the world evolves. It's very interesting now. All things change continuously, and there are so many new things. We hope we survive.
Of course. All right, I think we are getting close towards the end of this conversation. I would quickly like to maybe collect your thoughts on the feedback on Ethereum standard process. What were some of the biggest challenges you faced while documenting ERCs or any other Ethereum standard that you have authored? And also, if you have any suggestion for us to improve the process to encourage more contributors to document new standards for Ethereum.
I think that recently it seems to me that the idea of separating the EIP from the ERC has worked. It was a little bit painful in the beginning to try to make it because there were so many issues with the Jenkins scripts to control everything. But I think it is better, it's more efficient, it's faster, the review, wherever. But for a long time, I think the primary problem was that from when someone was proposing something and had some feedback, it was passing a lot of time. But I think the process now is quite smooth. So you cannot expect that something like this goes in a week. It's not that how it works. There must be a discussion, a conversation. I would probably, one improvement I would think that would make sense to me is that it's part of the process, but it's not really respected. It is the fact that in the EIP instruction about how to do it, you say, oh, you create a conversation, you have a conversation where the conversation has reached some level of, you create you make the PR to create the proposal. But I often see proposal that they go straight on the PR. You go to see on the Ethereum Magician, and there is the first comment and nothing else. So that is, I think that I would probably close those proposals, say, I'm sorry, I don't see any discussion. You propose it too early. A proposal makes sense for a standard if the community agrees on that proposal. If there is an interest from the community, so the community says, okay, this makes sense for many people, so let's work on a standard. But if we skip this part and we allow people to make pull requests there without having an actual conversation, hoping that there is a conversation later, wherever, the risk is that we inflate the documentation with a lot of proposals and maybe don't make much sense. It's and that would cause the editors, they need to make more work. Maybe I would probably say, okay, if there is no conversation on this, no debate at all, wherever, wait to make the pull request. In fact, when I made this actual proposal, we had probably, I think, 70 comments before, and I say, okay, maybe it's time that I make the actual proposal. It's I think it is important. The same for the previous proposal that is final, is about transferability, is if a token is transferable or not. In the end, is what you want to know. There were so many comments before then we decide, okay, let's make a proposal, a public proposal. I think that should be the standard way to go. And unfortunately, I'm seeing more and more people create a PR and ignores completely this flow. So that I would probably try to go back to a more structured way. Say, don't create a PR before having some kind of, because if not, we will close it. You know, it's also to economize the resources. You say, okay, if not also the editors, they have to make too much work to go to see all those proposals. You need to understand what it is. It takes time.
Absolutely. No, I totally agree. You have kind of nailed the problem here. I was really happy to follow the discussion that happened for this proposal on Fellowship of Ethereum Magician. It gives a lot of context to any new or external user to understand what is happening here and how the proposal has been moved to become a standard at the end of the day. So I totally agree that we should try to focus more on this part. And I will definitely communicate this piece of feedback, share it with EIP editors to kind of enforce the rule and have a minimum requirement set. If not, like we can not set a very high boundary, a minimum number of discussions should be there to make next PR, next status change, to just verify we have community engagement. That's really good. And I see that you have also authored proposal 6454, I guess.
It was
Yeah.
about a very similar problem. That is focused mostly on the transferability, but from the point of view of composability of a contract. So in other contracts, they want to know if that contract is transferable for some reason, and that is the final goal there was to do that. Of course, if you use that proposal 6454, you don't need the 6982 as long as you use this from a smart contract, because you can just check in any moment if it's transferable or not. If it's not transferable, probably it's locked. You know, it's an obvious. But the problem is that the marketplace and things like this, they don't query the contract. They don't ask if the function, for example, in ERC-6982 for default locked and locked, they are supposed to be called from smart contract. They can be called off-chain, of course, but it's unlikely that OpenSea will call a locked to see if it's locked, because to optimize the system, they just take all the events and they trust the events. That is, I think that I'm not convinced that is the best way to go, because probably I would anyway check if it's changed in, I don't know, and maybe the event has not been emitted, I don't know. But are two different worlds. There is a world on chain and there is a world off chain. On chain, the only thing that you really need to know if it's transferable. And that proposal was solving that problem. This proposal is more oriented to off-chain actors, that from off-chain they check and they want to know information. And to be complete, of course, we consider also the case of the on-chain. Then I have two functions that tells me the same information in real time. But that is for completeness. In theory, the proposal could have only considered the two events, the emission of the two events, because the primary goal was to solve the issue for the marketplace entity of chain, you know.
Interesting. I think we can perhaps have a chat on 6454 some other time. I remember having a bit of conversation with Steven, who is also a co-author here. So definitely we should plan a complete talk on that. Well, for today, I think this is really interesting to learn more about ERC-6982. Do you have any closing thoughts about PEEPanEIP or any message for the Ethereum community?
I don't have special messages. I love the Ethereum community. I think it's in the end, there are so many blockchains out right now, but in the end, the big innovation comes most of the time from Ethereum. That is it. And it's why this role as a guide, I would say, of an entire family of blockchains. And not to say that other blockchains are not innovative, everyone innovates in many ways, things like Celestia is very interesting, things like this. But I think that Ethereum keeps this role of the first, probably the first has been always Bitcoin, because most of the central proposals come from Bitcoin, and from Bitcoin go to Ethereum that adds all the smart contract part that is missed in Bitcoin, And I hope the community continues to be very active and strong. It's needed.
That's right. No, of course. I think these are great words for Ethereum. Ethereum definitely is one of the biggest decentralized ecosystem in blockchain, and most of the innovations are coming out of this ecosystem. Well, it is clear that ERC-6982 introduces features that could address some of the limitations, especially around the security and token lockup mechanism, and that will be helpful for projects. So, Francesco Sullo, we thank you for talking about ERC-6982, efficient default lockable tokens, a gas-efficient approach to lockable ERC-721 tokens. Now that this is in the final status, we are looking forward to see more adoption of it. And we really appreciate you joining us on PEEPanEIP.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And on this note, thanks to all our YouTube viewers for watching and podcast subscriber for listening to the special episode on NFT at ETHCatHerders channel. Should you have any question on this or any other topic, let us know at ETHCatHerders Discord. Check out the description for more info. And we'll be back with another interesting talk. Until next time, keep watching, keep listening, and keep sharing your love with Ethereum Cat Herders. Cheers.